Okay, I think we can probably get started now. Hi, welcome to our webinar about medium and heavy duty electric vehicles. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't been in one of our webinars or meetings before for Clean Cities, my name is Nicole Wargo, and I am a Sustainability Fellow for Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. And I am currently working on earning a designation into the Clean Cities Coalition for Southern Nevada. So I'm just going to share a couple slides and we'll let our presenters speak, but I just want to introduce everyone to Clean Cities if there's anyone new here. Can you see my slides? If you could give me a verbal yes. I can't see anybody.
Yes.
Yeah, you're good.
Yep. Thank you. So like I said, we're going to be talking about medium and heavy duty electric vehicles today. So a quick overview, we're going to introduce Clean Cities. We're going to have our presentations from Dave, Marcie, and Matt. And then afterwards, we'll do a Q&A for all of our presenters. So I know this is a familiar slide for a lot of you who have been in our presentations, but for anyone that's new, Clean Cities is a national network that's run through the U.S. Department of Energy. The goal is to reduce petroleum fuels, and this is done through approved alternative fuels and through idling reduction. The purpose, of course, is to reduce dependence on foreign oil, provide cleaner air, and lower greenhouse gas emissions. There are 75 coalitions in the U.S., but currently no representation in Nevada. So Clark County is working towards a designation into this coalition. So we have a really large stakeholder base for our coalition. And, you may be wondering who is considered a stakeholder for Clean Cities. And it's really anyone who's interested in reducing their petroleum fuel use. So, we would like to work with fleet managers, car dealerships, nonprofits that focus on clean air, all those types of things, but it's even open to just an individual who wants to learn more about sustainable transportation. So everyone's welcome to be a stakeholder. There are many ways you can participate in our Clean Cities. We have quarterly stakeholder meetings. They're usually virtual like this. Our next one will be in July. We have online programming just like this today. We've also had webinars about the health effects of petroleum fuels or how to reduce your idling, and we'll have more programming coming up for the rest of 2023. We will have some in-person events. Last month we had an electric avenue where everyone could test out electric bikes and vehicles. So we'll have a lot more events like that in the future. Soon, we are going to be announcing some working groups for our Clean Cities, and you'll be able to participate in those. And then there's opportunities to support, present, and host during any of these activities that we have. So if you want to learn more, you can scan this QR code. You can email me here, and I'll pull this information back up at the end of the presentation, or you could search Southern Nevada Clean Cities Coalition, and you'll find our website. So let me just stop sharing here, and I would like to introduce Dave from NACFE.
Hello, everyone. I hope all you folks are doing well today. I am working to get my slides to come up here. 1 second. I believe we're going sharing. Am I live?
Yes.
Great. NACFE, the North American Council for Freight Efficiency, we're a nonprofit group in the trucking world. We're an unbiased fuel agnostic nonprofit with a mission to double freight efficiencies. And a big part of what we do are scaling available technologies and guiding future changes like electrification. Now, what we do is free of charge to all of you. All of our videos, reports, everything else is absolutely free of charge because we're sponsored by all these fine people, both in the trucking industry and philanthropic groups outside the trucking industry. We've been at this for quite a while, about 13 years, and we do an annual fleet fuel study. Nicole just mentioned reducing idle. We track about 85 different technologies in the trucking industry that can help save your diesel fuel. I realize this isn't electric trucks yet, but I use this frequently in electric truck presentations to show nothing, even simple things in the truck industry, go from 0% to 100% in under a decade. So know that we're working with fleets and tracking this kind of things, and none of these changes I'm talking about are going to happen in under a decade. That just doesn't happen in medium and heavy duty trucking. We are also the people that want to teach fleets to run on less diesel. So we've branded our every other year demonstrations run on less. In 2017, it started with long haul. 2019 was regional haul. And then in 2021, for the first time, we did battery electric, and all 13 of the fleets that participated had different model OEMs and had a huge opportunity that I'll tell you about. And we're even more excited about what we're doing here in 2023. I'll get into details on that.
Hi, Dave. Can I just interrupt you really quick? I don't think your slides are advancing.
Well, that's strange. Let me stop sharing. Share tray. Am I back on?
Yes.
I am not going to put it in present mode and see if that helps any. Is it changing slides now?
Yes.
Okay. There are our sponsors, no membership fees. There's the annual fleet fuel study to show, yeah, we track 85 different things. Yes, it looks like spaghetti, but all the information's in the report. Here are the 4 different run on less events that we've been involved in. Now I'll jump into the details on those. In 2021, we had these 13 different OEM locations spread out in locations from Canada down through California. And with all the information we derived from the 3 weeks we monitored telematics on all those vehicles, we went and wrote reports afterwards. The first, which we published, was a review of the whole demonstration to show people what we did, how we did it, why we did it. Then we wrote 4 different use cases. One on terminal tractors. Those are these odd looking vehicles, look like a truck chassis with a telephone booth sitting on them, that move empty trailers and full trailers around distribution centers and warehouses. They are a phenomenal use case for electrification. Diesel tractors in these tend to foul up the after treatment systems that are meant to get hot. Well, a terminal tractor probably never tops 20 miles an hour and never goes more than about a half a mile in distance. So the after treatment systems never get warm and are quite expensive to maintain. Perfect application for an electric truck. Next was vans and step vans, because with e-commerce continuing to grow, the opportunity for electric vehicles in this realm is just absolutely huge. And Amazon, with their order for 100,000 Rivians, is a clear case in that study. Then we did the most difficult discussion is on regional haul tractors. Yes, some regional haul tractors already make sense for battery electric trucks, but certainly not all. It depends on the weight you're carrying and how far you plan on carrying it. So that was a tough report to write, but glad we got it out there and it's available for everyone to use. And last was the medium duty box trucks. Obviously, medium duty box trucks are a good case because they're fairly similar in nature to a van and step van, a little heavier, maybe a little farther. The challenge becomes the keyword box truck. Once you get to vehicles that are beyond a simple box with freight in it and start taking what used to be PTOs, power takeoffs, using engine power to doing other work truck features, then it can become a little more challenging. In addition to these 5 reports, we have a series of other reports that will be available to you at any time at our main webpage. Now, something, since I'm sharing for the first time with the state of Nevada, we've also done a report on adoption timing. We studied all the different states and provinces, different incentive behaviors, different types of terrain, different types of traffic and whatnot, and rated those areas that we felt would be high for electrification before some other areas. I happen to live in the Midwest. We don't rank too well in what's happening here, but we have very long distances with not a lot of support for electrification in some situations, a lot of coal, and not a lot of tax incentives. So other areas like California, Texas, Pennsylvania, New York, Ontario, Quebec do sensationally well. And if you want to look up Nevada, you can. It's all in there. Now, our Run on Less electric demonstration for 2023, our board of directors raised the ante and said, if you don't have at least 15 electric vehicles on your medium duty or heavy duty truck lot, you're not in. So we went out and I had a spreadsheet of about 150 locations around the US and Canada we were looking at monitoring. And we've just selected those fleets, and I'll show you that on an upcoming slide. To give you a little bit about the timing on what we're doing, right now we have just begun the boot camp. Every 2 weeks we're doing another webinar similar to this one. Instead of NACFE talking, we bring in 4 industry leading speakers on each of the topics to help bring a higher level of education, a deeper dive into what's going on. Now, what we'll be starting here in the month of June is we'll be going out to each one of these fleets with video cameras, drones, microphones, and recording the heck out of drivers, the fleet owners, the utility company, the charging system people, all of those, to find out how they've done, what they've done. And then we'll kick it off in September 11th through the 30th with telematics monitoring each of these vehicles, and we'll do the monitoring of the charging stations and whatnot. And again, after the run, we'll do an analysis of what we've learned. The boot camps that we're doing right now have these kinds of topics: relationships between utilities and fleets, grants and incentives. Obviously, we encourage people to work with their Clean Cities or Clean Fuels organization. Charging systems, especially higher powered ones, opportunities to extend range, resiliency like microgrids, and a lot of other subjects. So if you're interested in that, there's a register here button on the slide deck you'll be receiving. Now, the exciting part is just within the past 2 weeks, we've been able to announce who's participating in 2023. Frito-Lay has a whole fleet of electric delivery vans in the New York City area doing delivery to stores and other locations. OK Produce is a privately owned produce company in California that's made us very, very strong commitment to their green activities, both with their solar and other things on site, and also with the vehicles they're using. Penske is a nationally known rental and leasing company that has a wide variety of electric vehicles. One that was fairly exciting that just came out at ACT Expo in California, Pepsi is allowing us to monitor their Tesla semis moving beverages in Sacramento, California. So certainly that raised the ante with people watching that. Performance Team is a subsidiary of Maersk Company, the large intermodal shipping company on a global basis. Schneider is a long-haul fleet, but this is a regional haul operation based in South El Monte, California, in the LA area. The excitement here is for people that want to know, what does big look like? Schneider will have 62 Class 8 e-Cascadia semis all charging on the same parking lot. So we're talking about a charging system that'll probably be north of 5 megawatts by the time we get to September. UPS will allow us to monitor both their semis and their package delivery vehicles. And last but not least, Watt EV is one of those companies that is just doing some really incredible things with electric truck stops, electric trucks as a service or charging as a service, and really has a whole new business model to help truck fleets move into the future. So all of these will be monitored on a daily basis so you can see what it looks like to have an actual battery electric truck depot in operation. Now, you probably say, Dave, why so many vehicles in California? Well, the most recent public information, there's a new report due out soon from CalSTART, but their most recent version was published last June with data that ended in March of 22. And if you look at this, at that point in time, Nevada had only 2 trucks, and that's not too unusual throughout the middle of the US. Most of the states, even if they put all the trucks on one lot, couldn't come up with 15 trucks. Most of the battery electric trucks are in California and New York, and it just so happens that that's where the vehicles we'll be monitoring are at. Additionally, if you look down in the lower left-hand corner, the yard tractors that I mentioned are such a fantastic use case for battery electric. They're leading the way, at least they were last year. I fully expect that medium duty cargo vans and whatnot, light duty, will take over as soon as CalSTART publishes a new version of this chart. I want to say that NACFE is very pleased that we have a tight relationship with RMI. We're all about helping fleets become greener. They're all about utilities becoming greener. We work together. We've even published a primer for fleets on utilities and utilities on fleets. I've spoken at 5 utility conferences last year, and I'm really pushing for fleets and utilities to get closer together. I like to joke that we're at the junior high school dance stage. We're both pretty sure fleets are on one side of the gym, utilities are on the other, and we're both pretty certain we want to have a long-term relationship. But there's a lot of challenges in having that first conversation, and that first conversation needs to happen soon. I think I jumped a slide. There we go. One of the challenges that I see as we move forward is that both truck fleets and utilities operate in some very complex and very different manners. If you've seen only one utility or seen only one truck fleet, you've seen only one. Certainly the next one you run into is going to do business a little bit differently. So it's quite challenging for electrification when neither of us fully understand the other side. And that's one of the reasons we need to start spending more time together. Right now, we're in a really interesting situation. The first 35 years of my career in transportation, there were essentially no new OEMs. There may have been a brand that was sold off to another OEM or somebody that moved in from overseas, but not a completely new OEM. On the left side of this diagram, left of the bar, you'll see companies like Freightliner, Peterbilt, Kenworth, Navistar, Volvo, Oshkosh, Mack have been producing trucks for many decades. And all of those pictures are battery electric trucks that those companies are making now. What has really changed is when you look at the right-hand side and see Rivian, Tesla, Nikola, BrightDrop, Orange EV, Arrival, Lion, Lone Star, Canoe, Via, Vicinity, and a host of others, there are a lot of new names in the industry. It's exciting. It's also a little bit scary. It's tough to believe that all of those companies are going to do well when they don't have service networks and service parts networks and other things. I'm not saying they won't make it by any means. It's just, it creates a really challenging environment to figure out who you want to dance with moving forward if you're a truck fleet buying electric vehicles. It's exciting. It's clearly an indication that electrification is coming to the truck industry. Change is certainly on the way, and NACFE is trying to provide the information to help people. If you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, we encourage you to stay connected with us. We are highly successful using LinkedIn in a business-to-business environment, but you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Vimeo as well, and would welcome any of you to make contact with me at any time. We are here to support the industry in this transition.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was great. We're going to have Q&A at the end. So
Okay.
Next up, we'll have Marcie from Lightning eMotors. Is Marcie available?
I am. I'm just trying to pull up the right file. Hold on a minute.
Thank you.
I want to get window. Notes. Well, let me see if I do this. And then I want to do notes. Did that show up?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. So you can see that. Good to go.
It's not in presenter mode. I don't know if you want it
Okay.
set up like Dave's or if you want it in presenter mode.
Let's see. No. Let's
Yep.
see. Was that right?
Yes.
Go back.
Um,
Sorry, I
yeah,
can't.
it went back to like the slides on the side. There, yep.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, after all that, thank you, Nicole. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, I'm Marcie Willard. I'm with Lightning eMotors. We are a commercial battery electric vehicle manufacturer in Loveland, Colorado. And we're going to be talking about facts and fiction today. We get an awful lot of questions on a daily basis, and we're going to address those today. We're going to be incredibly transparent about it because they can be true, they can be false, or they can be somewhere in between, but we're going to look at all of that today. And I would like to say thank you, Dave, for that great presentation. We were really proud to be part of the Run on Less that NACFE did in 2021 with our partner DHL in Manhattan. So indeed, it was a good honor to do that. And we also worked with Nicole in January. She was wonderful in assisting with an event. So again, appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today. I'm going to start with a little bit of information on Lightning so you can get some background on the data that we'll talk about today. We started in 2008 as a hybrid regenerative braking concept, but we went full battery electric in 2017. We have a little over 240,000 square feet of manufacturing facility in Loveland. We do everything there, manufacturing and assembly. Have about 250 employees. And our focus is really the class 3-4 right now, though we are doing R&D around 5-6. Again, this is a medium duty shuttles, type A buses, box trucks, service trucks, mobile charging. We have hundreds of vehicles on the road moving towards 1,000. And I will say we're at about 100 on the road of the 1,985 that Dave mentioned. So we do have a lot of vehicles deployed. And through these vehicles, we've been tracking almost 4 million miles of data while those fleets have been in operation. And we monitor between 75 and 100 data points 24/7, 365. And so again, we've been able to garner a lot of information based on these deployments. And so some of the answers and responses to the facts and fiction today will be as a result of this data gathering. So transportation by the numbers. You will see on the right the number of vehicles on the road, and clearly passenger vehicles are dominant in this area at 89% and only 11% commercial. But when you shift and look at the graph there on the left, even though commercial's only 11%, they contribute almost the same CO2 emissions as the passenger. So clearly the medium duty and commercial vehicles are an incredibly important project that we all need to be working towards. I would never say that electric is a solution for all applications, but is certainly an excellent solution for many, and we certainly need to be moving ahead quickly with this transition. I bring this up because if you follow these 6 variables, we find that a lot of the concerns that I'll address in a minute are kind of taken care of by following this process as you go to deploy. So the first thing is to select the right vehicle. We work with fleet managers, we do fleet planning, we do route modeling, all to make sure that you have the right vehicle with the right payload capacity, right battery capacity. It's very important to have that right vehicle for the use case. Then we look at service. Dave mentioned that. I'll talk more about service a little later on, but it's very important to have the service assets available to you. Again, those analytics are incredibly important. Every fleet gets 24/7 real-time access through an app or a laptop so that you can optimize your vehicle and your operational cycles. Infrastructure is hugely important. We always have that conversation at the very beginning when people start to look at vehicles, because if you can't charge them, it's not going to be very helpful. We've just added someone on our team to help with leasing and financing. That's been of great interest to many of our fleets. It helps amortize the cost of these vehicles over a number of years. And finally, we do keep someone on staff to help identify and look for grants and incentives, follow tax credits and things like that. Go. So elephant number one, range is an EV limiter. This is probably the biggest question we get, which is what's my range? I can't possibly do my cycle within this range and so forth. So it certainly is a consideration. Our class 3 passenger and cargo van get close to 200 miles on a single charge. So certainly that's pretty substantial. If you need to go 300 or 400 miles a day without a break in between, this is not an option for you. But if you say go 150 miles in the morning, your driver comes back and takes a lunch break, and you can hop on a DC fast charger for opportunity charging, then you probably can make it work. So opportunity charging is one way to extend your range. Again, you phase in with the EV that makes the most sense with your route so that your drivers can get familiar and you can figure out the best way to deploy the vehicles. Right sizing the vehicle is important. I mentioned DHL. They operate maybe 20 miles a day, 30 miles a day in Manhattan. They don't need a 3 battery. A 1 battery will be just fine, and that extends the operational cycle and the health of the vehicle. We'll talk more about driver training, but that's very important in maximizing your range as well. Elephant number 2, colder temperatures negatively impact range. Absolutely true. If anyone tells you that this is not the case, they're not being transparent. AC does as well, but we don't find it's as big a hit on the total range degradation, but it certainly does to some extent. So you'll see in this graph at the top, the first line, those are vehicles we have operating in South Florida. As we move to the bottom, that's New York. As we move to the right, you can see March to October efficiencies, and then the big drop in efficiency as you go November to February, particularly in that cold climate. And you will see here, this is based on our data, a 34% efficiency loss. That's just simply the way it is. The HVAC pulls off the battery. And so if you, let's say, had a 200-mile range, you're now down under 150. And so we will work with you on what that would look like. But if somebody tells you these don't affect it, it's simply not true. And so again, it's very important to understand the mileage you need every day. And then we take a look at ambient temperatures, seasonal temperatures, and so forth to be very honest with what you could expect from the vehicle. Elephant number 3, driving a commercial EV is more complicated than an internal combustion engine. I would say mostly false. I mean, yes or no. Driving it, for us, we use an OEM chassis. So we work off of a Ford chassis or a GM chassis. And when our drivers get in those vehicles, they go, oh, this isn't scary. I know this dash. I know how this vehicle operates. It's very approachable to them. So it does make that aspect of it easier. Driver training does take some time. So I would say it is more complicated at the beginning, but with good driver training, it becomes a simple process. And I drive them all over now and I find them really easy to drive. I know what to expect and so forth. There is regenerative braking. It can be definitely your friend in giving you more range, accelerating evenly, preconditioning the cabin. What this means is, let's say you go out on a really cold day, while the vehicle's plugged in, that's when you turn on the heat, warm up that cab, and then go out on your day. That's a way to precondition. That helps with driver behavior. And we have an example here of a fleet we worked with who they weren't getting the efficiencies they needed. We turned to the telematics. We realized the drivers weren't utilizing the vehicles. We did some training and put them through kind of a gamification contest. And you can see here the results and the efficiency gains just by working with the drivers to make it simpler and more effective. This is an example of the type of reports, and again, all EV manufacturers like Lightning provides these. These are telematics. And so these are the various things we're tracking: the total mileage, the kilowatt hours used, the efficiencies, the regenerative braking time, energy usage, and then you can see the route as well. And again, fleet managers have access to this 24/7. So at any time, you know how your vehicle is operating and how the driver is performing. Elephant number 4, EVs are too expensive. They certainly are more expensive than an internal combustion engine vehicle. There is just no doubt there. Depending upon your grants and what you might be eligible for, it can take this cost down. I know Nevada is currently looking at some state-based incentives. Colorado just passed some that are significant. Of course, we all know that California has, excellent incentives. So it really depends on where you are. But if you can get a tax credit, for instance, through that IRA at the federal level or some other grant, you can see that it really improves your total cost of ownership, that TCO. So on the left side, you'll see that we find it's about a 77% decrease in what you pay for maintenance. And fuel expense is about 60%. By fuel, I mean a kilowatt hour is much more affordable, much cheaper than a gallon of gas or diesel. So you'll see that on the left. On the right, it includes some vehicle leasing, which again can help extend that cost over several years. It does include a low carbon fuel standard credit, so that wouldn't apply everywhere, excuse me. But at the bottom, it's clear that if you're able to combine some incentives and consider your maintenance savings and so forth, that it can definitely reach parity with an internal combustion engine. And this is just a bit of an example for that energy efficiency. You'll see the class of the vehicle, class 3, 4, and 5 on the left. The equivalent miles per gallon there, 15 miles a gallon for the 3, 8 miles a gallon for the 4, and 6 for the 5. And then you can see the efficiency for the electric, 48 miles in comparison to that 15. And at the bottom, 34 miles compared to 6 miles a gallon. So they're definitely a more efficient vehicle. Elephant number 5, the grid will not be able to keep up with demand. So far, we're seeing that this is really not true, and there's several solutions that help make the grid and EVs very viable. Firstly, utilities have known this is coming. They've been planning for this switch, they've been preparing, and they're understanding when their peak periods are and when off-peak is, and that they will have extra and excess energy at night. And so for our vehicles, and again, other EV manufacturers, our software is interoperable, meaning that the vehicle speaks with the charging and you can schedule the charging to go at off-peak hours where it's more affordable and there's more availability on the grid. There are also microgrids that are a way to amplify operating costs. That could be through solar or other renewables. There are new energy sources they're looking into for this, such as fusion. And at the end of the day, the highest emission grid is still cleaner in operating an EV than an ICE vehicle. Lastly, there's something called V2G, which you may or may not be familiar with, vehicle to grid. A school bus is a fantastic example of this. It sits at the depot all summer with a full battery. If it's connected to the grid, it can send energy back into the grid during peak hours, which helps that grid. And sometimes utilities are paying to access that energy, and then it charges itself again off peak hours. So it's a really nice opportunity. You're mostly seeing that in school buses now, but it will be rolling out in other vehicle types. Elephant 6, charging. It takes too long and it's too expensive. Yeah, mostly false. It depends on the kilowatt, the power that you want from that DC charger. But let's talk a little bit about charging. Level 2 is a slower charge. And in case of a vehicle that's 120 kilowatt hours, to give you an example, that would be our 200-mile range class 3 or our 130-mile range class 4. If you, let's say, pulled in at night and plugged it in on a slow charge, it would take 9 to 10 hours. And those AC chargers start, you can get one for under $1,000. The quality that we like and we recommend starts at about $2,500. So again, it's pretty affordable. Takes a 220 volt for that. Then if you need opportunity charging or more of a fast charger, you'll see that as you go up in kilowatts, your hours decrease, but you can expect the price to go up. So the DC charger we typically recommend starts at about $15,000, and that does require a 480 volt. I have found as I travel across the US, most states and utilities do offer infrastructure incentives, can be everything from design, build all the way up to the meter, and then after the meter is up to the fleet. But there's all different types of incentives available to offset not only getting it in place, but sometimes even the chargers themselves. So there's certainly a way to get this done quickly as far as a charging time goes. Electricity is cheaper, and I would really encourage you to work with Nicole and your utility providers because there's often a way to help with that expense. Elephant number 7, maintenance and service is complicated and expensive. I would say at the beginning, it certainly is more complicated because in most cases, your service team is not trained to service an electric vehicle. It is cheaper, however, as we showed, we find it's between 80%, 70, 80% cheaper to maintain because there's just a lot less going on. And you can see here a few things, intervals that we suggest for the inspections every 10,000 miles, every 6 months, the coolant replacement, 150,000 miles for the first one, transmission replace every 60,000. So this is pretty reasonable maintenance. Regenerative braking, which is wonderful and extends your range, also extends the life of the brake pads, and tire changes we see are about the same. So the way Lightning operates is we have a service network established in a few states, and those are where, as you can imagine, the majority of our vehicles are deployed. So if you're in one of these states, then we have a service network. We come right out on location and work with you there. We do provide an outstanding service training. So fleets who want to manage their own service, we come on site with our technical team and spend several days at your facility and train your techs right on site. If you don't have a service network and you don't do your own maintenance, we will send our tech direct to your fleet location within 24 hours. We know the uptime is incredibly important. We get our techs out there to address the issue right away. We also keep our parts in stock, and we find that 25% of the issues can be handled remotely. So again, when we monitor all these parameters, sometimes we can even see an issue before it's really happened. We can anticipate that something that might be taken care of remotely, and we'll do that so that it doesn't decrease your uptime. We know that that's very important. So we feel like at the beginning, it certainly seems scary and more complicated, but when you follow this process and work with us, we can certainly make the maintenance and service more reasonable. Elephant number 8, and this is the last one, and it's not really a true or a false necessarily, but we do get an awful lot of questions around batteries, and it's very important for us to address this. So firstly, our battery warranty is the same as our vehicle, 5 years or 60,000 miles, but an extension can be purchased. We anticipate the batteries to have about a 7 or 10 year lifespan. That's the addition of 3,000, or excuse me, the equivalent of 3,000 charge cycles. So charging the vehicle 3,000 times over its lifetime. That's what we think that lifespan is. We are a lithium-ion battery chemistry, and it is mined, and there's just no way around that. We know that that's the process right now, but there's a lot of research and work being done to identify lithium in different sources. So for instance, I just think this is fascinating. Geothermal plants, which is a renewable resource, the steam that's produced as part of that process contains lithium. And there's companies working on harvesting the brine from that lithium to provide a cleaner, safer source. So there's certainly work being done, but right now we understand that the process isn't as good as we would like it to be. Second life of batteries. What the heck happens with all these batteries when they're not used in vehicles anymore? There are companies as well already addressing battery recycling, already doing it. Redwood Materials, for example, everything from cell phone batteries to AA Duracell batteries, all the way up to vehicle batteries. And finally, for us, once our batteries in our vehicles are down to 80% state of health, we will be replacing those in the vehicles with new batteries, but reusing those older batteries in our mobile system, which is a big stack of batteries on a trailer that goes out to service charging on location. So that's Lightning's approach to the second stage of batteries. So with that, just to summarize, commercial EVs, really have a huge impact on climate. For instance, if you take one bus off the road, it's the equivalent of 175 cars. So again, this is really critical to move into this medium duty space. The costs are coming down. They are more expensive. There's no way around it, but the TCO is getting closer and closer all the time, particularly with the grants listed here. Vehicles are available today, even though there have been some supply chain concerns. We have vehicles on the lot, or if they're specialty vehicles, 4 to 6 months, which is pretty reasonable. Again, EVs are not ideal for all applications, but they certainly are for some, and we can help fleets identify that. And in addition to air pollution and climate change, billions of dollars of social costs and public health are incurred by within the United States every year. So there's a lot of reasons to look towards this transition. So with that, I will turn it back over to Nicole, and we'll do questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Marcie. That was great. And I just want to let everybody know that if you have questions now and you want to put them in the chat for Dave or Marcie, and they can answer your questions now, or if you come up with any while Matt gives his presentation, and we'll get to those at the end. But next up, we have Matt from DANNAR.
Hey, Marcie, if you can stop sharing, then I can grab the screen. Thanks. Thank you. And then I will just queue it up for us. All right, there we go. Nicole, thanks for having us. It's interesting as I listen, because I realize that there are some commonalities, and one of those, as we present, or even as Nicole is looking for good content for you, her stakeholders, the message that we're trying to convey is this is coming to your space. That's one of the big messages we're trying to get out, and then trying to provide some nuggets that will help you along that journey. And so as I chatted with Nicole earlier, I think it was last week, and talked about or a couple of weeks ago, content and some options, and I told her that, hey, I said, some of this that one of the things I could share is what I'm going to talk to you about here in a minute. But I said, some of your stakeholders probably saw this last fall, and we talked about what that content was, and in her opinion, and I agree with it, is that this is an important piece, and it fits certainly with what Dave and Marcie have shared. So for some of you, this is going to be a bit of repeat, but I hope it is a good repeat and a message worth sharing again, because again, the message that we want to get out is these changes are coming to the workspace that you're in every day. And we have different ways of trying to help you believe that's true. So, whereas Dave was showing a lot of statistics and showing you where around the country this is already in full effect, and in part to help you motivate to start making plans or taking your next step in the process. And then Marcie was able to kind of have the same message of this is coming to your space, and to try to create some urgency by managing the common objections out there, which is really a great way to handle that as well. And mine will be a little bit different, but it's the same. I'm hoping you'll see that this is coming to your space, and my space is the off-road space, the construction site, and the off-road work. But the message is it's coming to your space, and I'm going to do that simply by sharing some of my story and some of my experience, and helping you see that that's true, because my background is in automotive. I spent 15 years there before I started with DANNAR. So I watched electrification from its infancy, and watched and listened to people that were not very interested in the process. So this is go back 2008. That's when I started calling on Detroit, and it's when the Roadster was introduced by Tesla. And the people I talked to, the engineers, the program managers, the purchasing people, management at Ford and GM and others, this was kind of their opinion in the rank and file, felt this way about this idea of EV, right? That it's, yeah, sure, it's so good for the environment, but look at the cost. You know, it's higher in price, it's got worse performance, it's less reliable, it's got range issues and concerns, and you know, and there's batteries and things catching on fire, and there's all these safety concerns, right? And so, and yet, with that objection, with really no momentum in the space, we've gone from this being the reality of the EV on the road space to this reality in 15 years, and it's simply remarkable. This, you don't have to digest all the data there. That is simply EV worldwide EV sales and then sales projections. So 2015 to 2040, and you can just see the up into the right projection, and that's what's happening on the road. And I won't go through it all, but you can kind of see what some of the major manufacturers are saying and planning as they go about their pivot. This is a change that Detroit hasn't seen since Henry Ford and the assembly line in the Model T. It's certainly a revolution. So I want to make some observations, make 3 observations about the on-road space, about what's happening in Detroit and what has happened, because it is going to have an impact and what's going to happen off the road. So this is the first half is my effort to try to mobilize you and your team to start preparing for this change if you haven't already, and if you've started to be energized to take your next step. So the first thing I want to point out is that there's a lot going on in automotive besides just electrification, and that's the one that's getting the press, and I guess it should. But there are so many more interesting and important and incredibly important and technological changes happening in Detroit and in the automotive space. And we're going to take a quick peek at those to kind of set up what I want to share with the off-road space. I bet most of you have seen pictures like this now. This is a General Motors skateboard, as they will call it, but most all the EV manufacturers now have adopted this type of a design with batteries down low, with powertrain down low. It creates this nice low center of gravity. It's great for performance, and more importantly, it gives them the assembly crew all this freedom to configure up above, right? All this freedom to design because they're not encumbered by all of these other pieces and parts that have to take up space above the deck. And that's very significant. Marcie was just talking to us about vehicle grid. And this is another extremely important thing that's coming out of electrification, starting with what we saw in Detroit and on the road. And now, as Marcie accurately pointed out, school buses is a big piece of this. But there are very, very smart people spending countless hours and dollars trying to solve the best way to make use of all of that stored energy that is in parking lots now. And again, as Marcie pointed out, a school bus parking lot is a great example where you might have 15 or 20 megawatts of energy just sitting there ready to be used and to support the grid. So very important change that's happened along with the move from internal combustion to battery electric. We got all the safety features that are different. And I had this kind of experience again yesterday because I rented a car, but I remember the first time that I rented a car after not having done so for a while, and all of the safety features and all the different ways my car was now indicating something was happening around me. Cruise control was slowing down and speeding up, and my steering wheel would fight me to stay in the middle of the lane, and it was really disconcerting. But it spoke to all the different ways that we've changed. Not only is this a technological change, it's a cultural change. You may not believe this, but if you go back 40, 50 years, car companies would purposely leave things like the talk of safety seatbelts out of commercials and out of their ads because they thought there was a subliminal message that indicated that their car was unsafe if they talked about a safety belt. And today, the culture is saying, hey, if you can make it safer, make it safer. We want all those safety features, and there's a corresponding confidence, a belief, a trust in technology to get it right now that is different even than 10 or 15 years ago. So big changes on safety and that side of this. How about this autonomous technology now is pictured there with our friend with his hands off the steering wheel. SAE, that's the Society of Automotive Engineers. They have established 5 levels of autonomous technology. The latest and greatest vehicles out there now with the latest technology on it in this space are at level 3. And legally, you're not driving the car when that system's engaged. The computer is driving that car for you. Level 4 and level 5, we already can do that. It's already achievable. So there's no more jumps in terms of technology to get to those levels. Maybe some of you have taken a Waymo ride down in Phoenix, and I think San Francisco, maybe a couple other places now where they are doing live beta testing. You can hop in a Dodge Caravan that's been outfitted with their software. This is what it looks like in this picture down left. There's no driver. You just tell the computer, "Yep, that's me. Yep, that's where I'm going," and off you go. And they've driven millions of miles, driven people around in a rideshare service that way, testing this technology. So this is here. This is happening around us today, and in the automotive space. Last one. So this is more of a cultural shift now. So look at that calendar. That's March 29, 1983. And it's a significant day in transportation. And so I'll give you just a second to think about what maybe that day is. That is my 16th birthday. And you can see that's a Tuesday. So by Saturday already, right, I was telling my dad, like, hey, you got to get home from work early on Tuesday. And then on Sunday, I was like, yo, Pops, remember, you got to be home by 4 o'clock on Tuesday. Tuesday morning, I was like, Dad, you remember, I'm not going to baseball practice. We got someplace to be, right? Because I was going to go get my driver's license. That was just how the world was in 1983. Getting a driver's license on your 16th birthday was independence. It was freedom. It was a rite of passage. And today, 25% of eligible 16-year-olds bother to go with their driver's license. And that just, I can hardly get my brain around that statistic. And only about a third of all teenagers have got their driver's license, which to me makes no sense. But to that generation now, to the young generation, this is the world they envision, right? Where there are these transportation hubs around the city that will move them around safely, efficiently, and environmentally friendly. And that's the car ownership and paying for gas and paying for insurance and all that is a hassle to many of them. And they'd rather simply move around this way. It's just different. And that cultural change is important for all the rest of this to work. So again, first thing I want to point out, there's a whole lot more going on than just electrification. The second thing I want to point out in terms of the automotive space on the road is that this revolution isn't over. It's not close to over. And when it is, with this 15 years forward or thereabouts, picture a world without the internal combustion engine in our cars, but picture it without driver's license, without car ownership, and without steering wheels. That's the world that is coming at us fast on the road in terms of personal transportation. That picture, in fact, I had a kind of a fun, just futuristic car-looking picture there. But then I saw this on LinkedIn. This is an Arcimoto 3-wheeler. Arcimoto's out of Portland doing really cool work on this electric 3-wheeler. They have a Faction is the brand. That's the company that has the autonomous package. Okay, that's the software provider, and they're doing beta testing now in out east. I believe this is New York, where they're doing final mile delivery. So think like Walmart and Uber Eats, that kind of delivery service under 500 pounds, no driver. They just show up and they'll text you that they're there, and you go out and hit it with your code, and off you go. That's the world that's what's on our doorstep. All right, final thing. All of these changes, this disruptive technology and coming out of Detroit is not going to stay on the road. It's coming to these other spaces. Dave and Marcie just kind of illustrated the fact, right? Talking about giving you a lot of statistics and a lot of clarity in terms of how it's impacting the over-the-road trucks and the medium size and the final mile delivery truck space. All of these changes are coming to the ports and the city and county fleets and to the farms and the work sites that you work in every day. I could say it this way: if you put gasoline and diesel in it today, it's on the list. And I don't claim that we're not going to use gas or diesel at all 10 years from now or 15 years from now, but I am telling you that there's going to be alternatives to using gas and diesel in essentially all of those spaces. There are people working to make that so. So if that's true, and I believe it is, and this picture is an example of that. This is a crack sealing system, right? That you typically would see a couple guys walking along the back of a truck with the sprayers in their hands at idle speed and walking behind and fixing sealed asphalt. And now we have this laser eye reading the asphalt and a robot coming over and providing the sealant. That's happening today and being tested on Air Force bases. It's coming to a city and town near you in not too distant future. So if that's true, here's how we pivot. We're going to play this game to pivot to the off-road space. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. If you're an off-road fleet operator or manager, or you have responsibilities for purchase of equipment that works off the road, I got a couple questions for you. But first, we'll play this little game. It's called Name That Wheel Loader. So the top left picture there, that is a current model, actually a 2022 model Cat wheel loader, because I put this together before Vegas last year. But those pictured down below, you got a wheel loader that's 5 years old, one that's 10 years old, one is 25, and one of those is from the mid 70s. It is a 50-year-old Cat wheel loader. And I wonder if you could even put them in order by age. And the funny thing is I couldn't do it anymore because I mixed them up and I have no idea what order they're in. But the slide, I think, makes its point, right? And that is, in this case, the cliche holds. This is simply the way we've always done it, right? If we got to move a pile of something from point A to point B, this is the way we've always done it. All of our working lives, this is how we move around gravel and mulch and manure and whatever. And my message today is that this is no longer the way that we will always do it. So if what's happening on the road is coming off the road and it's going to impact all of these other spaces, my challenge to those who are spending budgets today to replace equipment like this, and I'm just picking on the wheel loader. I could have put virtually anything up here that is single-purpose diesel, low utilization type of equipment that's in yards all over the country. How long do we keep spending here, knowing that the revolution is coming? And I think that's a question worth asking, worth taking back to your team. So the second question, part B to that question, is this reminder that we're not just talking about this is not just not diesel conversation. That when we talk about electrification or pick your diesel alternative, right? There are options beyond diesel, or I'm sorry, beyond batteries. Doesn't have to be batteries, but if you're looking to get rid of your diesel, does the solution you're considering take into account all these other changes that are coming? Because all of this is coming to this space, not just the elimination of internal combustion. Does this equipment that you're considering, does it have the latest safety features in mind? Can you share it across departments, and is it configurable for a variety of uses? Does it have a vehicle grid or a bi-directional transmission capable? Can it receive an autonomous package? Because more and more of this work that today is being done by operators is going to be done autonomously by a robot, by computer. So these are all considerations that we have to consider even when we're looking at this new equipment. Because here's the warning with this question. The warning is this: we can spend big on not diesel, but still kind of fall further behind if we don't get this piece of it right, and if we don't consider some of these other technological changes that are coming with it. So this is where my automotive story ends. 2 years ago, I met Gary DANNAR, and I saw this vehicle, and I heard his vision for this company, and where it was going to fit and how it would go to market. And it's because of the lens I I have from automotive, and watching that having that front row seat, watching electrification go from no momentum and a lot of pushback and frankly a lot of naysayers to the revolution that is today. Because of that experience, when I saw this vehicle, I knew there was a technological and a cultural inevitability to the success of Gary's company. That in the years forward, that these off-road spaces, the ports and airports and public fleets and utility fleets, the construction sites, the farms would be littered with vehicles that look and operate like this, the vehicle that he showed me, and I wanted to be kind of part of his team. So very excited that I have that opportunity. I have that opportunity. And so if you'll indulge me for just 3 minutes and 3 or 4 slides, I will give you just a very, very short and quick and happy commercial. This is our mobile power station. It works, powers, protects. It really, I'll talk about it from a work side and a power side. When it's all batteries up on the decks as well, 0.5 megawatt of power. So this is to take power to the job site. So if there's pushback, if your pushback is, well, I don't think diesel's going away on the job site because we need to have power remote. We need to have it when we have it. Well, this is how that power is going to start showing up. Here's a real world example. Caterpillar equipment. Not Caterpillar. Volvo Construction Equipment has just added our vehicle to their website, to their dealers as their recommended power on the job site because they're rolling out their electric fleet, right? So Volvo now has an excavator and a front end loader and et cetera, electric options. Also, useful for all the non-planned, the unplanned power needs, storms, emergency response, et cetera. Mobile charging over the right side, a couple of fast chargers we can add to the bumper, level 2s on every unit, a lot of ways to export the power. And there's our skateboard. We talked about the skateboard in automotive. Well, that's top left corner. That is our skateboard. A quick funny story. I showed this picture to a group in Atlanta last summer, and I said, there's our skateboard we stole from automotive. What I didn't know was that our corporate attorney who lived in Greenville, South Carolina, had driven over and was listening to my presentation. I'd never met him. I didn't know he was in the audience. So he came up to me afterwards and said, hey, Matt, nice job, but maybe we don't use the word stole. So I have to say this is our skateboard inspired by the automotive industry. But you can see the different ways we can configure it, right? At the bumper with the 3-point hitch, with the work arms like a skid steer, and then you have the decks that you could put things like a scissor lift or a water tank, et cetera, on. You can take them on and off, swap them out, and get a lot of different work done to help fleet managers eliminate the low utilization diesel single-purpose type equipment. And again, designed to work across departments for infrastructure, emergency response, seasonal needs, built with safety in mind, et cetera. And again, I'm gonna leave it right there with my commercial. But we really believe that again there's the job sites are going to be littered with this type of equipment as we go forward. So here's my last story because it looks like we're doing pretty good on time. So I will leave you with one more story. So 4 years ago, I had to replace my current vehicle. I chose a 2-year-old Nissan Altima, kind of a salesman sedan. I still drive it today. I didn't even consider a battery electric vehicle at that time. But if I was replacing that Altima today, if I was in the market today for a new vehicle, I would strongly consider, and I would go out and look and test drive the battery options, the EVs that are out there, because there's some really good ones. But here's what I wonder. I wonder how many years from now before I will not even consider buying a car with a gas engine. 4 more years? I would think if I go forward 4 more years, will I even consider buying a gasoline engine car? I don't know that I would. And I tell you that story because I'm, again, encouraging you as a fleet manager, as someone that's involved with off-road equipment. I acknowledge that 4 years ago, there was just really, virtually no options in your space for anything but diesel. And my encouragement today is that there are some really good options. And my question for you is, how many years from now before you won't even consider buying diesel because of cultural changes and pressure, because of technological changes and availability and options? How many years from now before that diesel option will be off the table? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that day's coming. And just knowing that's true, the knowledge that day is coming, I hope will inform and give you some reason to pause and consider and discuss with your team that today might be a good time to at least consider the options that are out there, because there's some good ones. There you go. I appreciate your time. I'm going to stop sharing and hand this back to Nicole.
Thank you, Matt. That was a really great presentation. So I now want to open it up to questions. So if you have a question for any of our panelists, if you could raise your hand at the top of your team screen, there's a button for that, or you can put the question in the chat. And just, we'll try to do one question per person, and then we can move on if there's time allows. And I wanted to kick off with a question really quick for Dave. You mentioned the boot camp training videos. Is that open to anyone?
Yes, that's a great question, and it absolutely is open to anyone. We have over 1,000 registrants already, to give you an idea of how much interest there is in learning about electrification for commercial vehicles. So please join us. If you can't join us, they're recorded and they're on the website. The 10 sessions from the 2021 boot camp are all still there. So there's we've done one for this year already. So there are 11 boot camps out there that people can watch and learn about electrification from real industry experts.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for either Matt, Dave, or Marcie?
Joanne put one in the chat here that basically, let me read the whole thing for you. Our home cities, towns are completely designed for accommodating lots and lots of people driving all around the town, probably. How will the new future you described change urban design and transportation and urban planning? And Joanne, that's a phenomenal question with all kinds of different potential answers. As somebody that attends dozens of conferences a year, both to listen and to speak, the combination of electrification and autonomy have some vast potential changes. Some of it's quite exciting to me. My parents and in-laws are still alive in their late 80s. And as people lose their driver's license in the future, they'll be able to summon an automated vehicle any time of the day or night to go out and do what needs to be done. That's a phenomenally exciting thing to me. Some people are absolutely scared to death of autonomy. I personally think it'll bring around, for aging baby boomers like myself, a lot of freedom. Like Matt, I desperately wanted my driver's license, and I really don't want to ever have to give it up. But I know at some point in time, someday, that day will come. And to have an autonomous vehicle that can take me somewhere without me driving is a sensational change. I can also tell you that the combination of those things, Joanne, I saw a video, Witricity does wireless recharging system. They showed a video of an urban mobility vehicle that was like a small shuttle bus that can drive itself around town to take people places. And when it needs to, it can drive back to its parking garage, put itself over its charging pad, and wirelessly recharge itself. Imagine a vehicle that can move people and take care of its own quote unquote fueling needs. So there are a lot of different things along those lines, Joanne, that it's quite likely that urban environments are going to change more in the next 20 years than they have in the past 20 years.
Those are all great points, and it's going to be interesting to watch all of this develop over the coming years. I have a question for Marcie. I know you mentioned that the cold can impact batteries, but what about heat, since that's obviously an issue for us here in Las Vegas?
Yeah, so we find that the biggest draw is a heater in cold weather, and the second biggest draw is the AC in the summer. So we feel like it's probably 30 to 35% that it would take off your range for heat, and probably somewhere between 22% and 30% for AC. So again, there's some things that can be done, but you absolutely have to account for that. So let's say, again, your vehicle did 200 miles, then you would subtract, that 30% or so off that range. And then your fleet telematics would average that out for you, and so that you would get more and more efficient and more accurate information during your season as that time went on. But you have to, those are the two biggest draws on the battery, is first heat and secondly air conditioning. And that's why also, Americans want to be 60 degrees in the summer and 80 degrees in the winter, and there's very little in between. But again, preconditioning that cabin to heat or cool while the vehicle's still on the charger makes a big difference. So I come in the morning, vehicle's plugged in to the charger, I turn it on, make sure that cabin's super cold or super warm either way, and then go and then be more moderate. If you have it cranked the whole time, it is not going to be the most efficient way to operate the vehicle.
Well, that's really good information to know, like I said, especially here in Las Vegas. Does anyone else have any questions? I think Jody had a question earlier that Dave might have answered. Are terminal tractors currently diesel?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
terminal tractors are currently diesel, but that is probably the fastest changing area. If you were to go out and buy a new diesel terminal tractor right now, because they've now faced much stiffer emissions requirements, the after treatment systems are just not compatible with the types of operations that a terminal tractor does. So that marketplace is rapidly changing to battery electric only. And another aspect of that that's beneficial to the public is that a heck of a lot of these distribution centers are located near urban areas. It's because we want our stuff, we don't want it tomorrow, we want it today now. But we've become so impatient that I ordered it, why can't I have it today? So the distribution centers are not far from your home. So those trucks are operating in some cases 24/7. In the future, they'll have zero emissions out of those vehicles, whereas today that diesel's running all the time, putting out emissions into your air.
I had a question for Matt about the vehicle to grid for your products. I know that you mentioned that you could take it out to like a remote work site, but are there any other applications? Like I could see it being used if you could plug in where there might not be an electric charger somewhere.
Yeah, so in terms of its support of the grid, there's some good opportunities, particularly when you talk about the utilities. If you're going to take or if you're at you have a big facility and you want to take a building down to do basic maintenance on the electrical, anything that's outfitted to currently receive like a diesel generator with that's already set to plug and play with that, we can be compatible with. So you could plug us in, we could run that building, or we could run that city block for a few hours while the utility company is doing their maintenance work and doing changes that they need to make. So certainly at the job site and specific to localized need for power, that's a great opportunity to bring us to bear, specific to bring power back up to the grid for them. So you could put a 3-phase package on ours and take it off that way for the grid. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I got it a little bit mixed up. The vehicle to grid versus also like remote charging. So yeah, the remote charging, or is there any other ways that you could utilize like your products remotely?
Yeah. So again, anywhere where you would want to have power with you, or you have the potential of losing your power if your power supply is just at risk. Again, certainly, remote job sites. If you're doing, like U.S. Forestry Service, for example, or the national parks would be an example where they regularly are needing power or needing to have access to power that's not on the grid, or pumping stations for a water district, you know, where they have to have some backup and resiliency. So really any of those places where you need to have a resilient plan, or think about any place where you pencil in diesel generator as your solution on your plan. You say, okay, every place I've got diesel generator penciled in, let's pretend I have to take that off and I've got to come up with something else. That's an easy way to, I guess, for ours, for our vehicle, but for other alternatives to that, just to say, okay, that's a great place to start. Any place where your first thought is diesel generator, you say, okay, I've got to come up with something else, some other alternative, and that's where we're going to fit in all those spaces. Yeah.
Good to know. It looks like James has his hand up.
Hello, thank you, Nicole, for bringing all these innovative solutions to us that are watching. I just wanted to ask Dave if he could explain. Well, I really love seeing people virtually in their homes, because I wanted to ask Dave about his vehicles that he has up behind him.
Since I've been designing trucks in the truck industry for 40 years, I hate to admit, when we moved a year ago, I had 17 moving boxes of toy trucks, die-cast collector model trucks.
Dave, turn your camera back on for us, Dave.
My camera is on, isn't it?
I can see it. I can see you, Dave.
Oh, I don't know why I can't. Okay, sorry.
So things like this Tesla Semi, it started out as a toy sitting on my shelf. It's now out there in the real world. So it's exciting to see things changing and becoming real life. And the future's got a lot of changes to it. It's quite exciting. Somebody actually in the trucking industry, an owner-operator, called me today joking about his internal combustion engine and said, does anyone even contemplate why we use that term? There used to be external combustion engines, i.e. it took wood or coal to create steam and move a vehicle.
There you go. Yep.
So yeah, at some point in time, we were all kind of bothered because somebody created a quote unquote internal combustion engine. And for all the people that think battery electric vehicles are absolutely crazy, please keep in mind that when Henry Ford created his first car, there were no gas stations anywhere. They didn't need gas stations yet. So we'll get through this transition. It's going to take a lot of teamwork, a lot of collaboration, but the future is going to look so dramatically different. With essentially in the future will probably be majority of wireless recharging in spots. That thought hasn't even come across many people's minds, but the Aspire Research Center at Utah State University is working very hard on that subject. We can have, instead of having electrified parking spots, we'll have electrified roadways where you can charge as you're moving.
All really interesting things to start thinking about. Does anyone else have any questions for our speakers? They all just did a really good job covering their topics, I guess. Well, I want to thank, oh, go ahead, Dave.
If you come up with questions afterwards, please contact us. Let us know what you got questions about. That the three of us love to answer questions and help people find the way forward.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I'll put up a slide with my information if you want to reach me, or if you have a question for any of our speakers and you need to get in touch. But I hope you all have a great day, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.